Hey, welcome to JG3 Reviews. My name is James, and I've got another fountain pen to review for you today, and this one is another pocket pen. I like small pens that I can throw in a jeans pocket, don't have to worry about, and I kept seeing this Moonman 80 Mini on eBay and Amazon and everywhere else. And I like the style. It's styled after a Parker 45, a classic mid-century modern pen. And so I like the style. But I kind of held off for a while because it's pretty stubby. In fact, it's so small. Let me give you a comparison. This is my Samsung Note S Pen. And this is actually longer than the 80 Mini, just to give you an idea of size. It is that small. But there are a couple of things that I want in a fountain pen that I'm going to talk about when we flip the camera and look at this a little closer up that I look for. One, of course, it's got to write well, and we'll look at the writing test to see whether it passes that test or not. Two, it needs to be small and compact, and this definitely qualifies for that. And I really prefer a pocket pen that I don't have to worry about if it's going to get scratched up or dinged up or things like that. And so that one, I might have some questions on this pen. But is it a good pen? Well, let's flip the camera, take a closer look, and find out. Okay, so let's take a look at the Moonman Mini 80. This is a pen that is styled after the Parker 45, and you'll see a lot of similarities. One nice thing about it, it does come in a nice box, cardboard box, if you're a person who likes boxes. Now, for example, the pen here in the background, this is a Bauer 388. We'll review that soon as well. Came in bubble wrap and tape, and that doesn't bother me. For what I paid for that, that's fine. The the Moonman 80 does come with some nice retail packaging though. And I think I paid something around $8 for this pen. It is a mini pen, and it's so much so that it looks like what it is. This is a Moonman 80 that's just been absolutely hacked off to make a pocket pen. And so it is quite small. Again, just to show you again closer up, this is the S Pen from a Note 10, and that is the Moonman 80 Mini. So that's pretty small, isn't it? So very good candidate for a pocket pen. And as I said, I have a few things that I look for there. The first one being, how well does it write? But the second one is, how well does it fit in a pocket? And this fits in a pocket really, really well. Some even, the front pocket of a button-up dress shirt. Some companies, I don't know why, but they make those pockets a little shallow, and a typical length pen doesn't really fit, or at least I don't like how much it sticks up. And so I've gotten to where I carry a pocket pen sometimes that way, just because some pockets are a little too shallow. And that just kind of seems to vary based on who made the shirt. But handy size, it's pretty stubby, almost even a little too small for some. I think if the length was about there, that would be even better. But it is a hooded nib pen. So let's look at the style of it, just like the Parker that it emulates. It's a hooded nib. It writes very fine and a little bit dry. I'll show you that here in the writing test. But it's definitely a fine point, maybe even an extra fine, depending on how you read that nib. But it's from the factory, it's called a fine point nib. The styling of the pen, I think, is quite good. Of course, it's that mid-century modern style, and I like that. It has a similar to a Parker clip. They didn't put the feathering here at the back of the arrow, but definitely emulating their style that way. It has etched around the band the Moonman name, and so that's nice. No model number on the back like some, but that's done well. Everything about the pen, I think, is done pretty well. It's a plastic pen, and so it's going to look and feel like a good quality plastic pen. Just a plain top to the cap there. Same thing here at the bottom, nothing fancy there. But just a nice, simply styled mid-century modern pen. And it does cover this stuff. It posts really well. That's nice and secure, and you're going to need it to, because this pen is so small that if it were not posted, I couldn't even write with it. It has to be posted for me to be able to write with it. So that's something for you to consider. It has a nice balance to its weight, which is good when it's posted. So, feeling the hand, all that kind of good stuff is all good and seems well made. It does come with a converter. Let's talk ink and converters and cartridges and that kind of thing for a second. It does come, like most Chinese pens do, with a converter included, and you can see how tiny that is. It's just a bladder converted, and it doesn't have the steel band around it like many do. I have had trouble's probably not the right word. It's just that so far I've not gotten any more ink into this bladder than that. So it is not a high capacity small pen. It's a low capacity pen. You can use cartridges with this pen. It did not come with any. Well, I take that back. The seller that I bought mine from sent cartridges, but they're too long for the pen. They're great for other pens, but not this one. They're standard. You can use Parker Mini Quink cartridges, Q-U-I-N-K Mini cartridges, and those will fit in this pen, and they're kind of hard to find. So when you find some and you get some, you're going to want to keep those and probably refill them with a syringe, because ink cartridges are just not as plentiful as they are for some. I do, right now I've just been using this. I don't have any of the cartridges yet, so I've been using this bladder converter. And like I say, the only thing about it is it just doesn't, you're not able to get a lot of ink in there. Of course, you could fill this with a syringe instead of squeezing as it's meant to do, and maybe that'll work. But I will say, I don't know about the durability of this bladder converter, just because this is loose there and it could be pretty easy to wear that out quickly. So that's just something to keep in mind. I'm going to get some of those cartridges and probably use it more often that way and refill those. I think that'll be simpler for me. That's the way I'll do it. But the style of the pen and the build of the pen, I think, are actually quite good. So let's go ahead and do the writing test. Okay, so let's see how this writes. This is a Moonman 80, and definitely a Mini. It is a fine, and I would say it writes fine, almost even extra fine. Very nice and clean, and you can see the flow here is really good. It's not particularly wet. I'd say it's a fairly dry nib, but it writes really well. This is a Noodler's black ink, and it's just they're permanent black. I don't use black ink actually all that often, but I've been filling a few pens with it lately, just for a change, and it writes very well, and I think it pairs with this pen really well. And that's an American ink. If you're looking for something bought in the USA, then you can find that, and they do a really great job, I think. Noodler's does. Do the numbers here. I like the variety of movement that numbers provide in demonstrating a pen's writing in its nib. I'll show you how. So I think that's pretty good, not bad at all, as far as what it puts down. It's plenty of ink, but it's not too much. It's not too wet, and writes a nice fine line. So would I recommend this pen? I definitely would. I mentioned my criteria for a pocket pen, and first is it small? Yeah, that's real small, very handy size, great in a shirt pocket that might be shorter than it ought to be as well. Is it a good writing pen? I think it is. I think it writes very well. It's smooth. It does give you some feedback, but it's not draggy at all. Not scratchy in the least. So it's just, I like feedback actually. I like to be able to hear a little bit. I like a fountain pen that's smooth and yet gives you enough feedback that it gives me a similar writing experience to pencil. I tend to write better, and I just enjoy writing better with pencil and with fountain pen with a little bit of feedback. So it passes my writing test anyway, and there's going to be some personal preferences there. But for me, absolutely. The only third criteria that I have for a pocket pen, besides it shouldn't cost a fortune because it's a pocket pen, which it passes that little bonus category, is is it going to hold up in my pocket? Is it going to get real scratchy and all that kind of stuff? Well, this one probably, there are going to be times I'm not going to want to throw it in there with my keys and my pocket knife, because I think this one is not going to look as good scratched up as some pens do. I've been carrying that brass Irarita, however you want to call it, similar to the brass pen in my pocket, and see, I want that to get scratched up. I want it to have a patina. I think the brass will look awesome. This one, I really kind of don't want to damage it, so I've been sticking with shirt pockets and jacket pockets, because it is fall, with this one. So there is that. But do I recommend it? You know, I do. And actually, it makes me want to go buy the full-size version of the Moonman 80 as well. I don't know that I will, but it makes me want to. It tempts me to, because it writes well. Even though it is a very, very tiny pen, when posted, and it posts really well, I just find that it's a really comfortable pen to write with. So if you think that that's the pen for you, or if you think somebody you know might really like a handy pocket pen and one that has a look that carries a little bit of mid-century modern class, you know, Christmas is coming. That might be a great gift pen for somebody in your life. Thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, and share, and I'll see you in the next review.